one of you is gross. Anyway, let's talk about Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani is now mayor of New York. He has been sworn in as mayor of New York, and holy fucking shit, conservatives are weirdly pissed about this. Now, I wanted to mainly do a breakdown of how this is being covered by a more lefty aligned news article, like from The Independent, and then a more right-wing aligned, far right-wing aligned news article from Fox News. But I just want to say right now, let me know in the comments section real quick if you guys have seen the absolute madness that is people freaking the fuck out about Zohran Mamdani being sworn in on the Quran. Let's just ignore the fact that in America, you're not supposed to have a religious test in order to hold office, and forcing you to be sworn in on something like the Bible is very much a religious test. Let's also ignore the fact that if a Muslim swears in on the Bible, a book they notably do not believe in, then it means less than a Muslim swearing in on the book they actually believe in. And let's also point out that a lot of people have been getting up in arms about this solely because the Quran contains a lot of verses about what to do with non-believers, like when to kill them and shit like that. And you know what? I understand. I would be more worried about that if the Bible didn't also have verses about how many shekels of silver to sell my raped daughter for. I really don't care that the book does contain yikesy shit, because the other book also contains yikesy shit, so who cares? Lenari says, people swearing on something sacred to them? Yes, absolutely. And I believe any Christian that comes in and says that I would not want Christians sworn in on the thing that they believe in, it would be weird if they said, I don't want Christians sworn on the thing they believe in. But the minute that you change the religion around, suddenly they get mad. But ever since 9/11, we have had a gigantic gout of Islamophobia, so it makes sense. There are reasons, 100%, there are reasons to be skeptical of Islam. There are reasons to scrutinize it, just like there are reasons to do so with Christianity, as I have done for years. But let's make no mistake, they're mad that he wasn't sworn in on a Bible. And the Bible is the thing that he doesn't fucking believe in, so it doesn't matter. Moderator says, 9/11? More like 6/7? I'd say you should 8/9, but I'd rather you ate a fucking bullet. Anyway. Gargamay Gold says, Mamdani is sworn in on the Quran. Oh my god, the horror. A Muslim was sworn in on the Quran. You know, if you have a problem with that, maybe we should all be sworn in on the Constitution. You know that thing our laws are actually supposed to be based on? Dorito, I am... Tal, Jesus fucking Christ, thank you for the $50 tip. I did not expect that. Jesus. Dorito Dave, there are so many barriers between you and I doing that. 1, I'm too lazy to travel. 2, you're decidedly male. 3, you smoke. Like, literally every single one of those is a fucking barrier. Also, I just have no interest. I've got sake, and I'm pretty fucking happy about that. Anyway, Lenari says, I think 6/7 is dumb too, but sir is harsh. No. See, if I did not know that Dorito Dave was ex-military, and he's cracked at least 10 times more suicide jokes when he got up this morning before fucking breakfast than I did today, then I would maybe feel a little concerned. But I know my moderator, and I know he's okay. Anyway, let's see how this is handled by The Independent. So, the crowded Democrat, Zohran Mamdani, notice how he's Democrat. According to the more left-wing one, he's Democrat. Democrat Zohran Mamdani's inauguration broke out in Tax the Rich chants as he was sworn in as New York City's mayor Thursday. Sidebar, can we point out that Elon Musk apparently, publicly, supposedly has paid $20 billion in taxes, and yet he's gained, like, over $46 billion in tax subsidies for his various projects. He's certainly gained more out of the tax system than anything. Dorito Dave says, honestly, my first post is going to be telling Cyrus that I'm trying to start a pistol. I'm trying to 69 the Glock 19. Jesus. Gargamel Gold says, who on earth is Dorito Dave? Dorito Dave is my moderator who is in the chat right now. Mamdani pledged an aggressive agenda to make the city more affordable for working people after campaigning on issues such as universal health care, affordable rents, and free bus service. Cool. So I know I'm just reading the highlights here, but the highlights seem to be focusing a lot on just the basic stuff that he is doing, and not in a bad way. His public inauguration, which came hours after a midnight ceremony, featured speeches from prominent Democratic socialists, including U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Sanders, whom Mamdani calls his inspiration, defended the mayor's agenda, saying, making sure that people can live and afford housing is not radical. It is the right and decent thing to do. The crowd of several thousand erupted in cheers when Sanders called America's millionaires and billionaires to pay more in taxes, breaking into a chant of tax the rich. Okay, cool. Absolutely makes sense. There's a full version of the article. I don't know if we need to go into the full version of the article because I mainly want to juxtapose this with how Fox News is covering it. And Fox News, instead of calling Mamdani a Democrat, which focuses on how closer to the moderate position he is, they focus on him being a socialist because they know that their readers have a more visceral reaction to socialism. Socialist New York City Mayor Mamdani inaugurated alongside Bernie Sanders and AOC on New Year's Day. I was elected as a democratic socialist and I will govern as a democratic socialist. Okay, so let's see what's in the meat of this article here. Senator Bernie Sanders swore in self-described Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani as New York City mayor Thursday, calling his election the greatest political upset in modern history. The inauguration ceremony took place New Year's Day afternoon outside New York City's historic City Hall. During his inauguration speech, Mamdani leaned directly into his ideology, telling the crowd he had no intention of moderating his approach while mayor. I was elected as a Demsoc, and I will govern as a Demsoc. The newly minted mayor also made clear his administration would pursue an aggressive expansion of government power. Here's where reading this in full may be good here. Inside Mamdani's inauguration speech. I stand alongside you. The tens of thousands have gathered here in Lower Manhattan, armed against the January chill by the resurgent flame of hope. Man, that's a really good bit of articulation. That's impressive. That's impressive. But, man, it's so strange to me. It's so strange to me that what Zohran Mamdani is doing is considered aggressive government expansion of power. I'm sorry, but do you feel like having a more affordable rent is an aggressive expansion of government power? Do you feel like being able to afford going on a bus all the time is an aggressive expansion of government power? It's sure flexing government muscles to make that happen, but I feel like the language here is decidedly loaded, don't you? Now, of course, Mamdani did say, beginning today, we will govern expansively and audaciously, acknowledging his agenda may not always succeed, but insisting that it will be bold. To those who insist that the era of big government is over, hear me when I say this, no longer will City Hall hesitate to use its power to improve New Yorkers' lives. So, can that be seen as expanding the government? Absolutely. Absolutely. Any plain reading can see that. But here's the thing. I feel like when you live in a place like New York, that has so much money coming into it, so fucking much money coming into it, and not from the federal government. It's coming in from taxes. It's not like a fucking red state that has to be subsidized by the U.S. federal government. They make a fuck ton of money. New York City is like the city of commerce in the States. Literally just telling people, hey, we're going to use this money and use it to better your lives. I don't see a problem with that. I think that's fine. Little Firecat says, I feel like sending paramilitary elements into various states without permission is far more aggressive. Yeah, I feel like the way that ICE has been used as well is just like a little more aggressive in general than whatever the fuck Mamdani is doing. Aha! The aggressive government expansion that is making you pay like $20 less on your bus over the course of the week. Big government. It doesn't seem that bad. It doesn't seem that bad. Let's see what a couple years under Mamdani is going to look like. I have some very, very conservative friends in New York who are very mad at everything that seems like a Democrat controlling their lives. So I want to see how this particular conversation will end up flowing with those people over the next couple of years. New York Attorney General Letitia James administered the oath of office to Mamdani midnight. Actually, you know what? Mamdani used a Quran during his midnight swearing-in ceremony, according to his campaign, making him the first Muslim mayor of New York City and the first to be sworn in using a Quran. In addition to Sanders and James, staunch Mamdani supporter and progressive Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez delivering the opening remarks at Mamdani's public inauguration, where she declared a new era for New York City. Now, I am curious what the comments say here, because it's definitely interesting seeing not only from the main headline of each article, which part of the Democratic Socialist, the different newspaper organizations, news entertainment orgs are trying to focus on. And real quick, while I'm thinking about that, maybe consider subscribing to the channel, because, like, I'm not saying I'm always going to be unbiased. I feel like arguing that I'm unbiased would be a fucking lie. Anybody on the internet that tries to say that they have an objective, unbiased opinion on anything is just selling you snake oil. But I can promise that I will be as even-handed as I can where I can. And if that's something you find valuable, if you find making politics a little less miserable to deal with valuable, then maybe you should subscribe to the channel. That would be cool. That would be cool. Taproot says there's nothing wrong with big government as long as it's being used competently and with the consent of the governed, you know, like being elected or something. Exactly. Exactly. Like, people who say that there are problems with big government, I wish I could agree with you, but those people tend to also be in favor of big business having no regulations. And I just want to ask you, when we do the reductio ad absurdum for big business, where we get the company town, which historically we have, what is the difference between that business and a government if that business just continues to expand the company town? I feel like those are the same thing. The only difference is we get a say over who actually governs us when we're talking about government, as opposed to with business, where some shady board of directors gets to, like, masturbate on a bagel, and whoever got the fucking landing on the weird part of the bagel, they're the guy in charge of your company town that day. But let's look at the comments here. Taxman61 says a reflection of two things. The fact that when you promise people things for free, you will get votes, and the poor quality of political competition. It will be interesting to watch how they blame the right when things go wrong. You know, I've noticed something interesting here. There's a thing that happens with the NHS over in Europe where, like, the NHS gets defunded by conservative orgs, and then they bemoan the failures of the NHS as they fucking defund them. It's wild. Jassa says Trump promised grocery prices would go down immediately after he took office. Yeah, that hasn't fucking happened. That hasn't fucking happened. I bought groceries today, and it costed me $140. What the hell did I even buy? I know I bought lettuce. I almost bought cabbage, but I think I still had cabbage, so I didn't do that. I got brownies. I know that there was another sweet that Saki wanted, so I got that for her. I got milk. I'm trying to think of what else. It was like 4 bags of stuff. And it was $130 fucking dollars. $130 used to fill my fucking fridge. And now I can't remember the handful of things I got. Dorita Dave says that happens with VA healthcare. We need to do a whole ass video on that train wreck. True. Garment Gold says, I'm in favor of limiting the power of government and limiting the power of big business. I'm more of a moderate liberal, bordering on social democrat at times than anything else. Right, but guess how we limit the power of big business? Through expanded power of government. The government needs to be there to regulate the big business. What's the best way to put this? There is a world that I believe exists in fantasy where you get a wing-clipped government and wing-clipped business. But we do not live in that world, so we have to pick the one that we are going to operate with. The one that we get more direct control over and hand in, or the one that we have absolutely no control or no hand in. Jassa says there needs to be big government because businesses can't be trusted to self-regulate. Also, like, there are certain human rights that you just cannot fight for if you do not have some teeth with your government. Tal says, could have pictures by and large taking over the government. We have Ask Questions 246. What a name, by the way. Ask Questions 246. Where Bernie spoke about fair share for wealth. What he neglected to say was who he was referring to. When all the wealthy and businesses move out of New York City, then they will start on the next level, and it will be homeowners with 2 cars. When they move on, it will be homeowners with 1 car, and then when they move on, it'll be homeowners, and so on. You can't keep stealing tax dollars to give to those who will not and don't want to work and want everything free. Ask questions. I'm just curious, did you know capital flight is a myth? Like, capital flight has been one of the main myths for years that the right has leaned on. And there's a handful of examples that people will use to try to say that it's real. Like, they'll go, oh, look at some of the, like, large podcasters who publicly left California, or some of the tech billionaires who left California. Well, they're still in the United States. They're still in the United States. And they didn't uproot their entire businesses out of those areas every fucking time. Mr. Rexplosive says, damn, I came in for some silly MTG stuff and got the most base stream ever. Mr. Rexplosive, by the way, love your name. That's a Invincible reference, I'm assuming. But did you not know about my political channel? Because, like, that's what my live streams are. My live streams are content for my political channels, and they are much larger than my Magic the Gathering channel. My Magic the Gathering channel said, no, my mom made it when I was 6 for Minecraft. Interesting. Oh, Mr. Explosive. I only read the Rexplosive, because Rexplode's an Invincible character. Gargamel Gold says, I don't deny the government needs power to control big business, so we cannot have a government with no limits unless we don't mind a dictatorship. Right, but nobody... So the words big government and the words government with no limits are not synonymous. The United States is a large landmass. By definition, we need a big government to cover it. Rexplodes my goat. Jesus Christ. Also, this is just a capitalist's reading of when they came for the billionaires. I did not speak up because I was not a billionaire. When they came for the homeowners, I did not speak up because I was not a homeowner. Just fucking... I'm just curious. Did you see that one scene in Full Metal Alchemist where Edward Elric just went, leather goods are edible, and he started trying to eat boot for dinner? And that's just what you decided to base your entire life off of? I'm right to fright says, for as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told, wealthy and the well-connected, that power does not belong in their hands. Mamdani have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Mamdani said in his victory speech last night, fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor, palms calloused from delivery bike handlebars, knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not hands that have been allowed to hold power, and yet over the last 12 months, you have been dared to reach for something greater. Tonight, against all odds, we have grasped it. The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty. He said these words, but how is he part of the we? He's never worked outside of politics. I don't remember if that's actually true. Hold on. Da-da-da. And there's another counter to this outside of that real quick. Dirty Dave says, Cyrus, did you see the FMA episode of The Dog and the Girl? Yes, I have seen the one thing that you use to trigger every person who's ever seen anime ever. Zohran Mamdani's work history. So... even if... Okay, hi. You are an adorable kitty. I love you. I do not have the time for you at the moment. You are adorable and fluffy. Even in the world where he hasn't had jobs outside of political organizing and all of that, to argue that you cannot be an ally to labor is a very strange argument. This is the kind of isolating language that is used specifically by people on the right to keep people isolated from one another politically. This is the same kind of language where you say, you shouldn't advocate for people's gay rights. What are you, gay? Like, I've seen that shit. There's this fucking... I'm not going to say your name because I don't want them to gain any more notoriety than they have, because they're a much smaller content creator, but there is a dumbass on the internet who spends time saying that because I advocate for trans rights, I must secretly be trans. And then went on a rant about how the only reason I haven't transitioned is that I look ugly. And, like, I get it. I am. But That is a dumb fucking set of statements that has no correlation to reality. Rexlo says, well, duh, everybody is trans. Fixed government analysis. Our own government has created and fed this rise of socialism, and we elected these people. America's headed for some rough times, all of our making. In the 50s, socialism and communism was stamped out before it got a foothold. You mean during the Red Scare? This guy was in favor of the Red Scare. The thing that even the most dedicated, like, capitalist neoliberal realized was a fucking mistake at the end. My God, Fox News readers have no brain cells. But at least they can read, which puts them at least a couple notches above Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. Well, that's it for that one. Apparently, Fox News and Independent, at least when you look at the two sides of the coverage for Mamdani, it's interesting to see what they like to focus on. When you look at the left, they focus on him being a Democrat, pushing his identity further to the center or the right. When you look at the right, they try to argue that he's a socialist first, which pushes him further to the extremes of the left and nowhere else. It's a very weird phenomenon. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagittarius, you know I'm not saying that last part, Valis of Sereth, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.